Content presented in Cheshire Corners is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult a legal professional if you have any questions or concerns about the content of this disclaimer, this series, or the legal implications surrounding psychedelic substances in your jurisdiction.
Welcome to Cheshire Corners. Today we have Stephen Thomas with us, and we can't wait to trip together through the looking glass. Hi, Stephen. Welcome.
Hi, Rita. Thank you so much for having me.
So Stephen is a licensed social worker, has a master's degree in psychology, social work, right?
Social work, yeah.
Stephen, welcome, and let's start with your story. The Bible of Psychedelics, the story of Stephen.
Ooh, wow, thank you for the generous intro there, Rita. Well, I am just at the edge of Generation X. I was born in 1979 in Georgia, so I grew up. I kind of came of age in the 90s. You know, the onset of the internet.
As I was doing that little tease.
Oh, that's
that little
right.
mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At?
See, that's what I said. Mm-hmm. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard it.
Around.
I'd never heard it said. I'd always seen the mark, but never heard it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
And it was a exciting time, I would say. Just there's a lot of media that I tuned into that shaped me, and I kind of got hip to, I guess you could say, the psychedelic paradigm through books that I came across, and music and movies. And so those were the seeds that were planted for me at a young age that really started to open my mind.
While you're talking about it, everybody please subscribe, put your comments, tell us what else you want to see next. Go to the detail and learn about Stephen.
Well, I was always kind of a strange kid, for starters, right? I was interested in mysterious things like ghost stories, and I mean, I remember just even in elementary school, I would just gravitate towards like paranormal and you know, just like the children's literature that talked about spooky stuff. That was what grabbed my attention. So if I trace it back, I'm like, yeah, I always had this kind of curious mind. There was like, there's something more here, you know? And then once I get into high school, I started reading kind of the work of Jack Kerouac and William Burroughs, the beat authors, the beatniks. And that's when I learned about psychoactive substances and consciousness, but through this 1950s rebellion.
Cellophane wrapped in the black nightmare of the endless factory. My soul squeezed in the hydraulic press of eternal drip, drip, drip.
Bucking the traditions of conventional society and just this freedom impulse.
However, we feel, based upon the experiences throughout the country, that this rock and roll rhythm has been the seed of trouble, and we want to keep trouble out of Jersey City, Don.
Rock and roll has got to go, and go it does. That's the best way I know to get rid of them.
So that hooked my energy, and it was kind of a quick road then to the 60s cultural movements. There's a lot of crossover from the beat generation to the psychedelic 60s. People like Neil Cassidy.
Though it was an open book exam, some were failures at the acid test.
Mike, then, being the Lord of the Way, not the way, you understand, but St. Mike, since we had the war in the heavens, the significance of these dangerous drugs, to see if you've passed the test of don't flip if you can't fly. We're going to see if the endocrine gland system is bigger than man, or is it man and the Sabbath then? But when I say to the $250,000 mansion parents, so-and-so's okay as he's in the other room shooting something in his arm, but all three of them hear me saying that he's not okay, that he is okay, he's got to graduate and prove to me that he's okay, right?
Crossed over from Jack Kerouac into driving the bus for the Merry Pranksters. So that was kind of my highway, my on-ramp to really tapping into this world and these topics. And I really never stopped from there. I kind of fell into a group of friends that was really special in high school, and we started exploring psychedelics in a way that was very naive, but also had a sense of something sacred to it. You know, I wouldn't have even known that word at the time, but I felt it. I think, you know, a good number of my friends that were participating in this exploration also felt it. And so we were reading Timothy Leary.
Turn on, tune in, drop out.
And we were reading the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe, which talked about the Merry Pranksters.
Like Tom Wolfe wrote, in fact.
Where's Gloria?
You came through the thing already?
Yeah, but yeah, it was that, but it was from a very specific viewpoint. And it's from the viewpoint of a journalist. And the reason there was any interest in writing a book at all was because Kesey is a writer, you know. So there's that, you know. Yeah. So that framework itself is kind of like the framework in which the book was created, but the actuality of the situation, the emphasis was completely different. Yeah.
Is that sort of bit still going on in California, or has it sort of died down?
Well, this is part of it here. We're living in part of it right now. Yeah. Right now. I mean, in terms of considering any activity in the past to be like a pebble thrown into a brook, you know, or into a pond. Yeah. So that the waves we're now experiencing one of the outside waves of that very thing, you know.
Those are two very different paradigms of the 60s. The Leary, steeped in mysticism and religious study and philosophy and academia.
Millbrook, New York, home and temple of the High Priest of Acid, Dr. Timothy Leary, the ex-Harvard professor who claims that perhaps 3 million Americans have taken the acid trip. The mystic who uses LSD to find God and may well be the first acid martyr. I asked Tim Leary if the acid experience has changed him.
Well, LSD has changed me religiously. I was a smart aleck, Harvard professor, bourbon-drinking atheist, intellectual, before I took LSD. Now I'm God intoxicated.
And then the Ken Kesey prankster vibe, which was, kind of gaming the system and thumbing your nose at authority and rampaging across the country high on acid on a bus.
Kesey and his friends painted up an old school bus in colors that were later to be known as psychedelic and set off to drive across the country. They called themselves the Merry Pranksters. They called their bus Further because that's where they were going. And they filmed the entire journey. And so you had these threads of history were really fascinating to me and my friends, and we were just like, this is something. This is more than just getting high, right? This is exploring adventure and exploring curiosity and spirituality, essentially. So that was how things started for me. Was, you know, we would find these spaces to hang out and really try to tune into this is meaningful, right? Synchronicities, like recognizing synchronicities as something worth exploring that really just lit us up. And it was kind of like peeling the veil back, even though I had no mentors, you know, aside from the books that I was reading, and we were all just figuring it out together in our teenage years.
How did you decide to go and study psychology and become social worker?
Yeah. Not immediately. Absolutely not. I've had a very indirect path to where I'm at now, which is, I guess, just part of how I'm wired. I never really felt like I wanted to fit in.
according to some prescribed path of like success or the typical trajectory for an American kid. It's like, I didn't want to just get an office job and settle down and, like walk a straight path. That's been hard actually over the years to try to figure that out. There's a lot of self-doubt and honestly depression along the way. It was like, who am I? What am I doing? I see, I'm seeing my peers following this other path that seems safer, but it was not a fit for me.
That Tom Wolfe book, the Kool-Aid acid test. And at the age when I read it, which must have been, I don't know, 23 or something, I thought that, I suppose like lots of people, thought, oh yeah, I'll go and buy a bus and do it. It seems like a good lifestyle option. Especially, if you're there thinking, right, obviously one day I'm going to be an adult, and you look at the adult lifestyle options available to you, and they don't seem to be particularly exciting. So the idea of riding around in a bus, spearheading the future, seems more interesting than working in a bank or something like that.
It took me a while to land where I'm at now, but the theme has always been seeking. Like seeking something deeper, seeking something more meaningful, seeking something unconventional, and recognizing the problems in the world and wanting to make a difference in some way, but not knowing exactly how to or how to get there, which led me to work in environmental nonprofits because I wanted to tune into the earth and address some of these crises that I felt deeply in my soul, that like work that needs doing in the world. And I did that for a while in my 30s mainly, and eventually it was important. It was meaningful, but it was not at the source. It was not deep enough to the root for me. And psychedelics had always been a window, a portal into this realm of depth that I felt a connection to. It was always like a catalyst. So I was constantly tuning into what was happening with organizations like MAPS and following the research. And once I realized that it was going to happen, right, that this was this worldview, this shift was becoming more mainstream, there was a way for it to break through. I changed my career at that point in my late 30s and decided I'm going to be a part of this because this could be the wave that starts to change the systems, and I want to be able to surf this, So that's when I went back to school for social work, because for me it was like the core here, the core issues, and this is my view of it. At the source of so many of these things that feel wrong in the world is consciousness and worldview and like separation, a sense of separation from something bigger. And we could talk more about that, but that was the impetus for me. That was what pushed me to go back to school, which I never thought I would do. I was just like, I'm good with academics, and I don't need a degree, and I'm just gonna kind of dance to my own beat and find my way. But at that point, I'm like, no, I want to professionalize in this field so I can do this as my work in the world and not just my kind of intellectual and spiritual hobby.
Cool. So it's also your intellectual and spiritual hobby to the extent as well.
Now it's like what I live and breathe, which is great. There's no separation. It's what I'm thinking about and exploring in my daily life, and then it's the work that I do with my clients, and I support a training program with an organization called Prati, the Psychedelic Research and Training Institute, where we're training clinicians, nurses, doctors, therapists, social workers in psychedelic medicine.
Prati imagines a world where people flourish and thrive in right relationship with the natural world. And our purpose is to restore connection to the sacred. And by that, we kind of define that as connecting to self, community, nature, and spirit. And so, yeah, I'm just so grateful to be able to do this in all aspects of my life, to sort of live and breathe, walk and talk this paradigm, you know, and yeah, it's just a really, it's a gift. It's exciting.
You're someone who have no problem of thinking unusual things, believing in different things, challenge your own beliefs. And I think that's, you know, to me, it's weird as it is, I think it's pretty healthy, because I think it's part of another psychological disease, maybe schizophrenia. Maybe you studied it, you know more than me. When people get stuck in one thought and one reality, and they cannot just say, okay, let's imagine that this is what's happening, and let's imagine that this is what's happening. I was so relieved to find out that I'm Jewish, and the Jewish God doesn't really asking to believe in God. It said you have to, well, it's asking to believe, but it's okay with the doubt. Because it says that the reason God created doubt, so now we okay to doubt things. And now we challenging things, doubting things, exploring, and figuring out maybe things are a little different. They are weird. Let's come to with open mind to them.
Things are very weird. Exactly. There's a mystery out there.
And it's so cool to solve that mystery, or, you know, not maybe to solve, but at least go that direction. Try to figure out as much as you can. And then look at the other mystery. And then also recognizing them as miracles, because that's very healthy to recognize things as miracles. As because what is an alternative? Einstein said for a reason. There's only two ways we can recognize this world. Miracles or not miracles. So with all that, I know that you recently also explored theory of Federico Fagin in regards to
fascinating
quantum mechanics and oneness and all
Absolutely.
That. And his idea of depression, why we have depression, because we're not doing things that making us happy in that reality that we actually true reality that we learn or coded not to see. So that's why we're depressed, because people are one, we all one, the whole world is one, and what makes us happy to understand one, and we're doing something different, and that's why we're depressed. And then it's another thing of his theory that I'm trying to just explain it in the simple words, that we are outside external quantum fields. Quantum fields that have avatar here, that have a drone, kind of like a drone here, that sees everything and does everything. But that quantum field that we have, which is external from us, connected with a whole bunch of other quantum fields, quantum entanglement, and we all connected, and we're all part of the one world. And I love how he's saying that you don't have to believe in this. This sounds very crazy.
Yeah.
Extremely crazy, but it's much closer than what we all believe here.
Same for me, and I appreciate that, because you had sent me that video, and I had actually come across that interview with Federico
Fagin
that came out recently, and I had come across that, and I watched it after you sent it to me, and it feels very resonant just with some of these things that I've been feeling into for a long time. Of there is another way to perceive reality that, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, so I won't have the terminology perfect, but just that the quantum mechanical worldview points to, which has not been integrated into our society. We're in this kind of, this kind of schizophrenic moment in reality, in the Western world, I would say, where there's a scientific paradigm that says that we could call materialism, that suggests that many things, right? But that the universe is meaningless and purposeless and chaotic and random, and everything that happens is just the result of these forces just kind of randomly interacting. Consciousness is just a byproduct of matter, that there's a mystery that materialism can't explain, is like, well, it just happens. We have brains and consciousness just pops out of it, and that's just what it is. And then when the brains die, it turns off, and that's all there is to it, right? And then in this quantum perspective, it flips everything on its head. It's just like, no, there is this vast oneness, like you're saying, that is consciousness, and matter is a byproduct of that. And that is where we need to start from. And when you bring that perspective in, then so much of parapsychology and paranormal and mystical research and literature now has a foundation of validity, because it can actually make sense. We don't have to shove that off the table anymore and dismiss it, which is what the materialist paradigm has done for centuries now. Is, anything that doesn't fit in their box gets pushed off the table because it's uncomfortable and it's irreconcilable. And so when I was listening to Federico bringing science in, but it's the science that urges a paradigm shift, and that those, we're in this time between stories where these worldviews are sitting at the side by side, and they need to merge somehow. We need a third way that can provide us a framework for understanding reality, understanding our relationships, understanding how we relate to ourselves, to the outside world, to nature, to spirit. And that's what excites me, is I see this happening right now through people like Federico Fagin, through authors and researchers like Jeffrey Kripal and Dean Radin, a lot of the folks that are working at the boundaries, the frontiers of science, that have the courage to not know and to work on trying to integrate this so that we can move forward in a new way. And my hope is that can create a world that's more beautiful, that's more connected, that's more that feels more whole, and where healing can happen more readily, where we don't get we're not stumbling over these blocks in our thinking that keep us stuck.
I like how you made an analogy of box, and I think this box of materialism I grew up in Soviet Union. There was no other ideas were allowed but materialism, and that box becomes really uncomfortable and too tight. And I think we know better than that already, that it just doesn't fit in.
Yeah, the soul knows, right? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it just doesn't fit in anymore. It just feels like we ready for something much bigger. And for those people, I know that I really like how people saying that about quantum mechanics phenomenon. If you don't believe in it, quantum computers still already working.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I've kind of come to that place in my life in conversations with people where I can kind of compassionately just observe where someone's at, and not have a sense of arrogance for myself. I mean, people are just where they're at with this, but I do sense that where we miss each other. Someone that holds a particular lens on the world, to where some of the stuff that I would like to talk to them about is just not, they don't have any place to put it because it doesn't fit in the box. And that's okay. Like, I don't know that whatever the container is for my worldview is accurate, but it's different. It holds different assumptions and different, different foundational prior beliefs. And we're in this kind of chaotic soup right now with belief systems that I think something is going to synthesize from there.
And that's where my attention is going, is who's doing this work of trying to synthesize, who's trying to write the new stories. And so, Fagin is definitely one of those folks. I would also just recommend Jeffrey Kripal's book, The Flip. Excellent short essay walking through this moment that we're in of like, and he uses this story or this frame of the third way, which I really like, which is, okay, we've got all of the depth of mystical comparative literature and mythology and the paranormal, and then we have all of the materialist, often very helpful technologies and systems that operate from the science of what can be measured. And that, all like the studio that you're in and the computer that I'm sitting at, and, so much of what we interact with day to day is a byproduct of, these centuries of the scientific revolution that have given us a high quality of life and modern medicine, and all these things. So it's not to discard either one, right? But they need to merge. And what will come out of that third way, that merging, is yet to be seen. So I think that's where I'm at, is like, I'm not going to pretend like I know what the next, foundational paradigm can look like, but I sense that it is going to be a merging of the scientific and the spiritual to something that embodies both. And we might not even be able to put it into words. It might just be something that the left brain can't compute fully. And so it's just this kind of like hemispheric union of our minds. And it's a world that I try to live in, even though I'm still stuck in my own boxes in many ways, Yeah,
we're all stuck in our boxes.
We're all stuck in our boxes.
But, just like you noted, I'm thinking about the same thing. Whatever Federico Fagin and other scientists, there's a whole bunch, many of those. I just like his theory more because it's a little bit more concise and easier to explain. And it just, but otherwise, a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people kind of in the same wave.
Right.
So, modern scientists that interested in quantum mechanics, people on psychedelics, Kabbalah, a lot more things, Buddhism.
Yeah, the list is
it's all coming together.
It is coming together. Yeah,
it makes sense way more than what we used to believe in. So maybe we're still wrong. Maybe there's other options. Maybe we're on the wrong path, but certainly feels different, feels right. So I want to explore it. I'm curious about it.
That's what I'm here for. Absolutely. Yeah. That is, this is the fuel for my hope in the world at this point, and, there's so much coming out now. There's so much change happening in this space. I have to bring in the telepathy tapes. I don't know if you've listened to that podcast yet.
My son said to me, I can hear thoughts.
What is this phenomena happening? Why are his mind and my mind completely connected?
Telepathy is the tip of the iceberg with their spiritual gifts.
People don't understand that they can do this. They don't even have to be in the same room, the same zip code.
Oh my gosh, this is the most exciting thing that has come to me in the last couple of years, I would say. Really, actually, since this psychedelic resurgence, which I'm still really passionate about and feel very hopeful around. But the telepathy tape. So this is this podcast that this woman, Kai Dickens, who is just like a media producer, she put this out, I think sometime last year. And it is a phenomenon. It has exploded. So many people are sharing it and talking about it in my circles. But it explains and sort of like tells the story of how non-speaking autistic people have telepathic abilities. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with these gifts and abilities that these people have. It goes into I mean, I think we're really just kind of plumbing the depths of how deep this goes, but see the ability to see people who have passed, like see spirits, commune with the dead. They can interact with one another. The non-speakers can go into this dimension in their minds where they can communicate with other non-speaking people in almost some like psychic chat room, and from around the world, like not irregardless of where they are in which city or town, they all can convene in this space and support each other and share knowledge and teach each. I mean, it's a wild flip of reality that is coming through these individuals with autism that don't verbalize, they don't speak, but they communicate with letterboards. They point to letters and spell out the words that they can't verbalize. So that, when you really kind of sit with what she walks through in this podcast, it demands a pretty profound revision of reality. And there's ways that we could test this, because they're so skilled at these abilities, these whatever you want to call them, quantum psychic abilities, that they can absolutely be tested to the extent that that it's happening and that it's real. And then how do we make sense of it and understand, and what do we do with it? That's the open question. But if I don't understand why this is not 24/7 mainstream news, but it is a incredibly popular podcast. It actually was #1 on the US charts for podcasts, knocked out Joe Rogan. So there's something happening here, and I think it is very synergistic with the quantum philosophy and science and the psychedelic realm. It's just all of this same opening that I sense happening, and so I see so many things like that, and more now. Like every day, there's more coming out.
And I know that I also heard, and I start believing and thinking that we all got hypnotized with the civilization, with the appearance, with epigenetics, with whatever it is, to believe the world is the way it is, and how to go about of changing it. So I was thinking, and I came up with an idea. I don't know, take it or leave it. Maybe good, maybe not so much.
Sure.
I think we need to change our dictionary, because if
the language,
because and start from the complex words and go back to the simple words. So start from top and go to the bottom. For example, we're not going to explain what rock is, but we will explain what happiness is first, and then go down to rock. So what is happiness? I'm pretty sure we can get it from a dictionary, but I believe that happiness is not a destination. And a lot of time in the materialistic world, people were saying, I want to be happy. But it's kind of silly for destination to be happy. I think that happiness is responsibility. We've been invited here to this life, to this reality. Whoever provides us with all the gorgeous, beautiful things around and an ability to make difference, we should be happy. This is responsible. We have to be happy. This is not an option. You have to be happy. Meaning is different. We can come up with meaning, but it's definitely not happiness. That's my interpretation. What's yours?
What is my definition of happiness? Is that it? Well, I think it is a state of being that is accessible, right? And the stories that we tell about why we cannot get there or be there moment to moment is the box. And I, want to be a little cautious of saying anything that might invalidate someone's suffering, right? Because suffering is real, trauma is real, and it does take some support to work through, which the psychedelics can be helpful with. Meditation and many other things can support. But that doesn't disclose the reality that we can change our minds by focused energy and intention on changing our state in the moment. So, for example, it is possible for many people, maybe most people, to be suffering with sadness, be suffering with depression, grief, and allow that emotion to be there, bring some awareness to it, and then choose to focus on gratitude, for example, focus on something that conjures an emotion that feels opposite to what they're stuck in. And if you can connect that intention to the felt sense, the feelings in the body of gratitude, of happiness, and allow that to be there, then you've just changed your mind in that moment. And so, you can then fire and wire, create neural pathways that don't stay stuck in that same rut, right? Because if we just continue to ruminate and tell and feed our bodies the cortisol and all of the neurochemicals that feel the grief and feel the sadness, we're just reinforcing over and over again that sense. And so there's there are practices that can help with rewiring our nervous system and our mind, and that's a start. And I have hope that if more people are able to do that, then the world can change around it, so that there's not as many systems that reinforce the suffering. We're not anywhere close to that yet. So, that is perhaps a destination that I hope for. But in the moment, we can make some effort to try to change. And again, the psychedelic medicines can help with that. They can help get us unstuck. And then there's the benefit of neuroplasticity, where then the neural pathways can shift, can be reinforced in a different way. So this is work that I am often doing with clients is, from a psychotherapeutic perspective, is, well, let's really try to step out of the box and question and wonder about the parts of us that are holding onto these stories so tightly. What is it that they're trying to do for us, right? When I tell myself things are hopeless, I'm a bad person, I am not living up to my potential, I'm destined for pain and sadness, right? This is from the internal family systems therapy perspective, but you can kind of work with those parts. If you can bring compassion to those parts and understand, oh, they're trying to help me because it's safer for me to feel this than to feel the deeper pain that that's at the core that it's reinforcing. If I can bring loving compassion to myself and to those parts, then that shifts, then that creates that sense of happiness in the moment. And that's where we can get unstuck. And then you bring some ketamine or some psychedelic in that provides more spaciousness from the box that those parts of us hold on to. And then we get a taste of it. And then it's like, oh, there is a way out. There is something else possible. So that's a little deeper dive on what you're talking about, like in my work as a therapist. But I think that you're right on with it is changing the story. And that takes some courage, and it takes some stepping out of the little box that we're so used to and so familiar with. Because once you sense that, then you can get some movement, and things can start to open up in a different way. And it takes time for people, but when you sense the progress, then it can be really motivating.
Somebody like Frederica Fagin defined happiness as when one is learning about itself.
Sure.
That's when we are the happiest. Yeah, if we can start changing our dictionary slowly, it's probably not going to be a very quick process. Maybe reality going to become different for the next generations.
I mean, I think so. I see it happening, right? This is, yeah, there's a lot I could say about that, but I do see it happening. And it's the work that I'm still doing. I get stuck, you know. I find myself sort of, you know, retreating back into despair at times. But I am recognizing that it's also what I choose to focus on that can benefit my happiness, because it's kind of, it's maintaining flexibility and relaxing around any kind of story that I hold. And then there's an openness and a spaciousness to feel something different. So it is also like, well, what reality tunnel am I choosing to stay in right now? Because there's so many options, right? And there's so many narratives out there in the world, in the media, that can pin us down to one emotional state. And I think, you know, in this tumultuous time with politics and with dogma of worldview, that there is a lot of pressure for anxiety and fear and despair, and it can be kind of infectious. It can be addictive. It is addictive, I think. And so, you know, anything that we can do to support people taking a break from that, you know, and it's not to dismiss that there's not actual problems in the world, but it's to say, you know, if we stay fixated on one particular thread, we lose the tapestry, and then we're not weaving something new. So, yeah, that's each individual's path, and as a therapist, I do help support people in those perspective shifts, but everyone has to get there on their own, you know, on their own terms. That's just what I've learned through my journey, is how that can work. And there is so much inspiration and validation to be found in tuning into some of these other possibilities. And, you know, listening to podcasts like Cheshire Corners would be a good start, I would say, for folks, you know, because you feel different when you tune into different things.
Yeah, and while it's kind of individual addictions, it also can be a group addiction. Propaganda is very big
is real
in group addictions. Yes, mm-hmm. And easy to point out how 120 million Russians start hating Ukrainians and want to kill them. Happened so quick. Happened just in front of our eyes. Mm-hmm. Happened before in the history many, many, many times.
It is part of the it's part of the paradigm that I'm hopeful that we can continue to shift, is separation, right? And what is that really touching on in our world, right? What is the unresolved pain that causes war and hatred and oppression and division? What are the pathways out of that? Sometimes it can be spontaneous. Sometimes it can be a mystical experience that someone just has naturally. Sometimes it can be elicited by a psychedelic experience or, mystical experience through meditation. I've had some pretty profound experiences just in sitting meditation that have been equivalent or sometimes more powerful than my psychedelic experiences. And so I think that there's something deep in our DNA, in our human makeup that wants us, that has pathways for us to touch into that. And I think it can ripple out in broader ways and become more accessible to other people. But this is where I'm excited for the third way, is like, well, how can this be more prevalent, more imminent in our world? And I do think that going back to the belief is that if we had a worldview that was dominant, that acknowledged and validated and made more space for this other way of recognizing reality, that some of these old ways of being that create the problems in the world will fall away, can fall away, become more obsolete because they don't make sense, right? Like what we do to another, we do to ourselves. We are all connected, right? We're all just sort of like sharing this experience. And so we don't get addicted to those, those habits and behaviors and emotions that are so entrapping and painful. So mystical experience, psychedelic expansion, meditative practices, communities that are aligned and exploring together. But it has to, it's going to be a bottom-up thing because the power structures are holding on to their control, and it's working really well for them to maintain control and power, but they suffer as well, so this is just this critical moment that we're in, I think, as a species, is can we transcend, can we mature to finally begin to overcome and level up from some of these repeated patterns that unfortunately we still see playing out. I have hope that there's a quickening, that things are accelerating towards that, but it's messy. It's a both and. We've got both happening at once.
Just like you mentioned, we're kind of picking and choosing reality to believe in. So why wouldn't we just pick and choose positive? Why wouldn't we choose to believe that tomorrow is going to be a good day? Because I think it's also not just healthy, it helps the world. And yeah, we may deep inside still have a doubt, but it's okay. We can probably still pick the reality of happy growth. What is your words of encouragement for our audience? And while you're thinking about it, I want to ask everybody again, please, if you didn't like or subscribe, please do that. It really helps us out. And leave comments. Thank you.
Really, just to kind of echo what you just shared, is that there is always another way to be in any moment. And to have that hope is foundational, right? So tune into what sparks that sense of hope, and be courageous enough to think about things in a different way. And then find people who can support you in that, right? People who are inspiring or are, supportive and curious, whether that's friends, family, people online, authors, books, films, things like that. Those are the things that help me to pop me out of any place that I'm stuck. And, each person's going to find their own path to that, but keep that hope alive, and it will continue to blossom, I would say. I find that through conversations like this, and through, books that I read, and honestly, podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. They give me a sense of mystery, and then like allowing myself to rest in the mystery and the trust that there's something benevolent to what is holding us all. And I'm not going to be able to figure it out, and that's okay. Maybe one day I'll know. Maybe when I die I'll know. But things that don't make sense are in a material frame, like, that don't make sense rationally. That's what gives me hope. There's something that we can't fathom that is guiding us to expand and to be held, and that I don't have to know what it is, and I don't have to, make it make sense. I don't know. That's what works for me.
Yeah, and we start talking about those things, and we understanding that there's more of this group. There are people who thinking kind of the same way. We don't have to think alike, but it feels like quantum entanglement starts happening right in front of our eyes.
That's it. I do want to just toss in a phrase that I heard from someone, something that I listened to that really resonated for me. So the word ontological, right? It's the study of reality. It's how we make sense of what's real. And in psychedelic experiences and paranormal mystical experiences, people talk about ontological shock, which is I'm confronted with something so different from my sense of reality that it's maybe terrifying or paralyzing with the how profound that is. And this person said, well, for him, it's more of an ontological relief. It's a sense of like, oh, it's not this way. There's something else. I don't have to put words to it, but the nervous system relaxes because there's something bigger that holds us in that sense of how dramatic and unfathomable this other thing is, and that holds you in a sense. And so then we can just let go and we don't have to struggle so much in trying to figure it out. So I love this ontological relief idea. Just like, yeah, just let go into it.
It's almost sound to me like it's a sense of the deepest truth. Like when you were taught and learned to act in a certain way while you think that this is not really making sense, then finally like, oh gosh, that's what it is.
Right. And then there's a knowing that can't be put into words sometimes, right? Bernardo Kastrup talks about that, right? Bernardo Kastrup, the philosopher Fagin talks about, is just like, yeah, I can't tell you, but I know. So I can tell you that I know, and that's all that I have. It's just like, oh, now I know because I've been there. I've touched it.
You felt it, you touched it. Words are too small of a container to express it all.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to us. All the best. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I enjoyed this. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Me too.